I started this video on mute. Hello everyone, I am currently wrapping up my initial playthrough of Baldur's Gate 3, and I wanted to share with you some of the big mistakes I've made so that you might be able to avoid them when you play or as you're currently playing. But I want to add here at the outset that there's no right or wrong way to play this game. The way that you play it and enjoy it is the most important thing. If you're having a fun time, that's what really matters. I'm not here to yuck your yum, just play how you want to, and in the comment section keep that in mind too. Be kind to each other, please. Your playstyle is valid, even if you decided that you wanted to throw Astarion off a cliff and upset everyone who loves that little vampire.
Hello, my dear.
One of the first things I learned as I was already into Act 3 of Baldur's Gate 3 is how much damn content I had already missed. Now, several of my friends have asked me about different things in Act 1 and Act 2, things that even after over 100 hours in a single campaign, I hadn't actually seen. I missed the dog. I don't have a dog in my camp. I have run into like 5 cats, several rats that hate me, but I missed the damn dog. Yeah, don't rush. You'll miss important things. Now, some things are going to be easy to miss, like conversations with NPCs, like using Wake the Dead or talk with animals. Those sorts of things are going to be more easy to miss. But there are other things that are completely avoidable from missing if you just follow a couple simple tips. Simply explore the map. Baldur's Gate 3 uses a fog of war map, and the white areas on the map are traversable. The game warns you as you're about to leave an area, and that's a good moment to look at your map for any unexplored areas and review your quest log. Several quests may not advance if you don't complete them in a certain act, while others may complete steps leaving you a bit confused later. For example, there are some companion quests in Act 3 that had kind of advanced, and I was expected to just kind of know what had happened, and I had no f***ing clue because I had ignored a couple companions. I'm sorry, I did ignore Astarion's quest like the whole time. Look, I was focused on other things like Shadowheart and Karlach and Gale. Sorry, they were more interesting.
Shh, not a sound.
But the point being, you may get a little confused later if you're not exploring all those things, so consider that there are other parts to do in every act. Number 2 is a weird one, and it's one that I didn't know about until just very recently. Withers isn't just for you. You can actually change the class or respec not just your player character, but also your companions. This is an excellent way to approach min-maxing your party to make it as efficient as possible. But it also works if you're a huge fan of one particular companion, but their class doesn't mold well with what you play. Say, for example, you're playing a wizard, but you're a massive fan of Gale, and also realize that running 2 wizards can leave you at a bit of a disadvantage. Simply change Gale to a sorcerer. Number 3 is going to be using the battlefield to your advantage. In battle, there are 2 main things that I routinely forget about doing, and I think there's a benefit in hearing about them. That specifically, I ignore the geometry of the battlefield and I spread my damage too much. The battlefield being kind of like where you're higher or lower than your enemy. You get massive advantages to your attack rolls if you're higher and using range attacks, and disadvantages using the reverse. It's kind of that lesson we all should have learned from, Star Wars, of having the high ground is an advantage.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground! You underestimate my power!
Just be careful when you're positioning yourself that you're not in easy range of an enemy, especially a beefier enemy with a high athletics, because they can and will shove you the hell off of your perch, and that tends to hurt a lot. The other part of this is all about the number of rolls going against you. While there are certainly going to be tougher and weaker enemies in any encounter, one thing I've realized throughout the game is that it's usually beneficial to clear out as many potential rolls against you as possible. Now, I'll caution this by adding that bunching your characters up is not a good idea, but having them in position to take out smaller enemies all at once and to avoid extra damage from them or extra effects from them is actually pretty damn helpful. Basically, would you rather get hit by 5 damage 5 times or 10 damage twice? Not to mention that they'll often have annoying status effects like slow or diminutive, which can really f up your day. But one surefire way to break concentration of any enemy is by killing them. All of them. Speaking of concentration, I haven't been using my status effects very well. It can be so damn tempting to just use the highest damage attacks all the time, especially if you're trying to eliminate the smaller foes like the tip before. But don't neglect your statuses, both buffs and debuffs. Things like sleep, slow, ice, protection, haste, etc. They can all make a huge difference in the flow of battle. It's kind of ironic that I forgot about this because when I think back to my old RPG experience, when I think back to like playing Final Fantasy, really the last turn-based game that I remember playing, other than Divinity Original Sin 2, haste was damn important. It was perhaps one of the most powerful skills, and yet I forget to use it in this game. Experiment with different spells to see what works well for you and your party buildup. Sometimes it helps to sacrifice damage in one turn to improve your position for the next. Baldur's Gate 3 often to me feels like a really intense game of like 3D fantasy chess. So it pays to play in a way that you kind of think a couple moves ahead. Although of course sometimes enemies will completely mess up anything you had been planning, so just be ready to react too. Number 5 is going to be try not to feel so guilty about cheesing. Baldur's Gate 3 is full of encounters that feel lopsided against you. This is part of the design of the game, and it's part of why there are so many different ways to approach encounters, from dialogue to throwing people off cliffs. It's also easy in some ways to cheese fights in Baldur's Gate 3. But honestly, this is part of what makes the game so much fun. Using choke points and thorns to kill enemies, starting combat with a surprise attack before engaging in conversation. One of the first ways I remember feeling some guilt about this was in the first act, where there is an entire section where all of the enemies were non-aggro because of some things I had said in conversation. I used this to my advantage to kind of section them off and kill them in their own little rooms away from each other instead of fighting them all at once. Now eventually they did all catch on and I had to fight a bunch, but I still had managed to whittle down the entire army to just a handful by the time they realized I had been killing their friends. But the reason why I was able to do this is because the game mechanics support it. In fact, in some ways, like encourage it. Some other examples of ways that you could be cheesing the fights are setting up your party in prime positions to ambush beforehand, like putting your ranged characters at higher ground. Remember, you can break your group apart and set them up in different locations before engaging in any conversation. You could use choke points to gather up enemies. Begin combat with shoving one of them off of a ledge. It's okay to play dirty. Go have some fun in the game. Think about combat in a little bit of a different way. But equally, if you want to completely avoid cheese, don't do it. Go head straight into it. Fight them head on and be the hero that Baldur's Gate needs, or some shit like that. I don't know, I'm still gonna cheese my way through. And save scum. I am save scumming the hell out of this game, and I do not feel guilty about it at all. I have been loving this game so damn much. The mechanics that Larian has put in have been fantastic. If you want to see my review on the game so far, after basically getting almost all the way through Act 3, you can see that in this video right here, where I kind of break down a little bit of what it is. But there are some minor spoilers in there, basically usually generally through the use of footage, so just be careful. I try to avoid as many as I can, but if you haven't played it at all, just watch it later. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Redbeard Flynn, and I hope you have a wonderful day.